Thank you so much, Carol, for this great opportunity to moderate this panel, bringing new products to market. As we've seen over the past year, how a challenging environment due to COVID is slowly shifting the consumer preferences towards, what ingredients and type of food that they put into our bodies. But in the meantime, some of the newly emerged trends, including adaptogens, immunity boosting products, are increasingly coming to e-commerce and traditional retailers. So before we move on to introducing our panelists today, I would like to just give a brief intro of myself. My name is Douglas, and I'm the business manager of Springdale Ventures. We are a $27 million VC fund based out of Austin, Texas, that invests in early stage CPG companies across several sectors, including food and beverage, personal care. We partner with visionary entrepreneurs to accelerate the growth of transformative consumer brands. And additionally, I'm a Forbes contributor, writing about investments in food and beverage, primarily leading announcements on fundraising, M&A, and IPOs. So now I would like to pass along the opportunity to our panelists and have them introduce themselves in turn and their companies, starting with Loren.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Loren Brill. I'm the founder and CEO of Sweet Loren's. And Sweet Loren's is a clean food company. We care about clean ingredients first and delicious taste. And our first product line is cookie dough. So we make America's #1 natural cookie dough brand.
And CJ, do you want to go next?
Sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. My name is CJ Pennington. I am the president and co-founder of Proud Source Water, where our mission is to do bottled water better. We bottle naturally alkaline spring water right at the source in an infinitely recyclable aluminum bottle.
All right. And Jeremy from Nutter Law.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having us. Carol gave an overly exhaustive background on Nutter, so I'll keep it short. But I'm a corporate and securities lawyer here at Nutter. I also have had the fun of working as an angel investor in this space and working with companies to help them raise money, get formed, move to the next level. Really, everything is their outsourced support system as they think about strategic growth. So thrilled to be here, and back to you, Douglas.
All right, thank you guys so much. As we know, personal needs are a big driver in launching both Sweet Loren's, Proud Source Water, many other CPG brands, but you also want to make sure there's a substantial market that can resonate with founders personally in order to make your businesses viable and profitable. So can you give us some insights on your market research process before launching your companies?
Sure. I started Sweet Loren's really out of a personal need. I started my company because after I graduated college in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with cancer. Thankfully, I was cured, but it really changed the way I looked at food and the way I looked at kind of what profession I'd want to do for the rest of my life. And I really cared about how food affects our well-being and health, and just became incredibly passionate about it. So the concept of Sweet Loren's really started from a very personal story and personal place for me. It was a personal need. I started to make my own natural cookie recipes because I wanted to eat clean and feel really good, but have unbelievable, delicious taste. And I couldn't find it in the market. So I decided to create my own. And I decided to start the business when I really saw the way that friends and family just couldn't get enough of it. So that was like the beginning gut instinct I used. It's not like someone said to me, "Hey, Loren, can you create a natural cookie dough that tastes better than a processed?" Sometimes I think customers don't know what they even want. But, I came up with this concept really from a gut instinct, a gut need, a personal kind of satisfaction I was looking for myself. And then when I saw that so many other people that were close to me wanted it as well, that's when I was like, wait a minute, I'm not the only one here. This could be a real business opportunity, a real problem I could solve for other people. So that's how, I started my company as a one-woman show. So I just that was the impetus for like, okay, I think this could be a business. And then I started to study food trends and started to study the food industry. And, I looked at the cookie dough category and there wasn't much innovation there. There was just a couple brands that didn't really speak to me. And I realized I wasn't alone. There was other people that wanted something that spoke to the modern consumer who was looking for clean, but also delicious, and also authenticity. I think like having a story and having a brand that people can trust is a real benefit. So I think, between gut instinct and looking at food trends and understanding the food industry and kind of white space and what people want, people want convenience more than ever. So, all of that helped me think about, I wanted to sell our cookie dough in the refrigerated dough section because that's where people are walking by the most often. People want something on hand at home in their refrigerator to bake easily for their kids. And knowing your audience, I think once I got us into a couple stores, I was that person kind of demoing in the stores, really talking to customers and kind of gathering feedback and understanding what the customer wants. And obviously, as we've grown, now we do a lot more by research, and we really study our customer to make sure that we're constantly, even now, tweaking our product to make sure it's always solving their needs, and how can we improve it. So I think for us, it's been that combination of, having like a real personal, authentic touch to it and gut instinct, but also doing a lot of studying and testing to make sure that this isn't just going to solve the problem for a couple people. This really could be like a national big problem that you could solve that could really create a really big, exciting business as well.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. Thank you, Loren. And CJ, can you talk a little bit about, how you started and, decide to launch Proud Source Water, and what kind of consumer demand do you see in, clean label bottled water category?
Sure. Yeah. We have a bit of a unique story where we were solving a local problem for a small town of about 500 people. It was Eastern Idaho, a small town called Mackay, Idaho. And we were at that time just looking to find a way. There's two individuals who were looking to find a way to create jobs for this town that had fallen on hard times and could really utilize some people to give them hope and instill hope to this town who were really kind of struggling. And so once we arrived at the fact that we had this naturally alkaline, beautiful resource available to us that was underutilized, we knew, okay, so bottled water was going to be the opportunity. And at that point, being that we were we were sitting here in a beautiful place, just right at the foot of these amazing mountains in this valley. It didn't feel appropriate to bottle water necessarily the way it's been done historically, with plastic and utilizing less than ideal tactics to sourcing methods and et cetera. So once we were there, it was about resources, what we had available, and at that time it was the internet. For market research, it started with the internet, going to grocery stores and talking with people, as well as a small group of investors, friends and family, of course, to bounce ideas off of, no different than most, and kind of getting the start. But I think regardless of the data points, the approach and how you interpret kind of the signals you're receiving from those around you, I think is really critical. Since we knew we were launching bottled water, I dove into understanding everything about the industry and started really with what consumers didn't like about bottled water. Felt like there would be a potential opportunity, and from there, you pick up on some trends that weren't necessarily top of mind for folks unless you were really digging into the details. So found that people were frustrated with plastic. And back in 2015, although it's obvious today, that was not necessarily something that was talked about often. Bottled water was, a lot of frustrations it was overpriced tap water. Found some crazy statistics about, 64% of bottled water is, just repackaged tap water. And then we saw this amazing trend, around 2015 where people were starting to pay more for their water. So you saw this amazing resurgence of kind of growth in premium water. And so as people were kind of switching over from sugary beverages swapping into something healthier, there was a real opportunity to kind of communicate to a customer that, hey, this is a naturally alkaline spring source. It's something that's healthy for you, but also good for the planet. And so, yeah, I mean, ultimately, we try to identify those weak points we'd seen in the industry historically, target those, and be extremely transparent in the way we went about it.
Absolutely. And I think, sustainability is a key aspect for lots of, younger brands to capitalize on. But before, moving on to that area of CPG and industry, I want to talk a little bit about, intellectual property, because patents or trademarks are significant in protecting a CPG brand's integrity from the beginning, which a lot of entrepreneurs actually ignore at the early stage, and then it creates a lot of legal hassle at a later on. So Jeremy, can you give us some examples of how you helped your clients build defensibility, and what are some of the common mistakes an early stage company should avoid?
Sure. So the first, a lot of our early stage clients ask us, can we patent the recipe? And the general rule to that is probably not. And even if you could, the cost of patenting it versus the value of the protection it would give you would not be a good ROI. I'd be happy to do it. I'm happy to cash a check, but it would not be in your best interest to do it. And so we usually advise against that. And one easy way to think about it is if you haven't undertaken 6 months or a year or 2 years of substantial research and development in creating a thing, there probably isn't a patent asset there, right? If it's mostly kind of a home kitchen approach to development, and it's really taking known ingredients in, relatively speaking, known quantities and recombining them in particular ways, and all of your packaging work and your market entry work, probably there isn't a great patent asset there. That's very different than a company, let's say, like Beyond Meat, or companies. We have a client who's in the yeast space who is actually generating new yeast organisms all the time, and is actually engaging in patent protection for those new microorganisms. So a lot of R&D, maybe a patent, not a lot of R&D, probably not a patent. On the trademark side, trademark is a really weird thing that a lot of folks get wrong, because it's both a creature of consumer protection and a creature of rewarding innovation and inventiveness. And so the law looks at that and says that the ultimate test of this is not that the PTO, the Patent and Trademark Office, gives you a trademark. The actual ultimate test is when some consumer alleges that it's confusing to them about the origin of the good, does a court say yes, or does a court say no? So consumer confusion is the ultimate thing. And in the land of the internet, the old rules about where you are operating might not apply as well anymore. Now it's kind of everybody is at least nationwide, if not global, as they go to market, right? If I type in crowdsource, I'm going to get crowdsource whether I'm sitting in California or sitting in Massachusetts. And so that concept of I can operate locally without treading on somebody else's trademarks doesn't work so well once you have an e-commerce platform and a website and social media marketing. You're pretty much nationwide. And trademark is something that's really important, and companies do spend a lot of time and money to think about how to generate unique assets that help a customer identify that this is the product that came from this company, right? So Sweet Loren, if you look at, Loren's website, there are the words Sweet Loren. There's the font, the logo, the texture of her marketing. That is a separate set of elements. All of those things create barriers that help protect her brand against copycat. In addition, another thing that people don't pay enough attention to is that trademark and patent are not the only forms of defensibility for your business. Exclusivity in our business is a huge issue. So if you have exclusive access to a channel or a customer or a supply chain source, those are other ways that you can create competitive advantage that help you outcompete your customer and better deliver a value proposition to your end consumer. And so, exclusivity, IP, they work together to create advantage. And that's the thing that when you're going and talking to investors, you're talking about, we've built a thing and that thing is a defensible and scalable thing. And so those are very important pieces early on. And just one other quick note, which is sometimes people will put, they'll come up with an idea for, cookie brand X, and they'll put that into the trademark database called tests at the PTO office. And they'll say, aha, no one has this thing, so I'm good to go. Yeah, that's not how that works. So the lack of a trademark at test does not mean that you have a protectable trademark or that you can file and get that mark. Sometimes it means quite the opposite. It means nobody can get that mark, or it means that there's so much confusion in the space it's not worth getting that mark, right? So I could file for apple pie flavored apple, apple pie branded apple pie, but it's not going to do me any good, right? Ultimately the office is going to reject that. So working with good counsel is important. And I'll leave with one other kind of small note, which is when thinking about a brand or a new brand, the other thing people should be focusing on is, do you have URL access that in a way that's not going to confuse people? Stop taking the vowels out of everything as millennials. It really is frustrating when people are trying to search for you. The other is, how are you going to find the SEO experience? So you could get a name, but if it turns out that when people type in the most common way they think about your name, and you're on page 3 of the Google search results, you have done yourself a radical disservice. So it's about that brand that you can get a trademark on, that somebody can find you on that URL, that you have a URL, all of those things working together. So I'll stop talking now.
Thank you, Jeremy. I think it's super, super insightful. And we see, even some of the larger brands a few years ago, like Kit Kat is trying to register the patents for their shape. I think it was an honest, successful attempt. So that sort of, gives a learning lesson to smaller brands to really, show them what kind of products in terms of formulation and trademark that are qualified to even file for patents. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there is another class of things called design patents that really look at shapes in a different way. So a great example is Palm Wonderful has a bottle that is instantly recognizable. You don't have to see the words on it to know exactly whose product that is. There are products who have built advantages around their packaging in very particular ways. And sometimes that merits a patent. Other times it's a trademarkable element or in some cases, a copyrightable element. So finding unique ways to go to market is great. It's often really expensive to do that as a new brand. That's a hard thing to launch with, right? You're guessing about customer traction, to CJ's point about trying to get data and filter noise from signal. At the beginning, if you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a custom package, you really don't know anything yet. You're just guessing. And so that's a big investment to make off the bat. And I can't speak for CJ or Loren, but most brands rebrand everything multiple times within the first 5 years. Oh, you're okay. You're not. So, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars up front to go do a custom go-to-market test is a pretty expensive way to learn that you don't have it on target yet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I want to go back to, to the founder perspective, because we oftentimes hear people say it's easier than ever to start a food and beverage brand nowadays by formulating it in your home kitchen and then scale it by partnering with a co-manufacturer. But scaling it to the next level with the right resources can be very challenging. So whether it's expanding distribution or diversifying your product portfolio to other categories. So tell us about some of the biggest challenges that you have faced during your scaling process, Loren.
Sure. So yeah, this industry is no joke. I mean, anyone who says it's easier than ever to join the food industry, I'd love to hear their success story, because it's a very, very expensive and competitive industry. And there's a lot of players that have been in this space, that are huge global brands with much bigger budgets. And when you understand how the food industry really has been run for the most part in terms of working with supermarkets, there's slotting, there's limited shelf space, there's a lot of things that you're contending with. That's different than looking at if you're just launching, let's say, online e-commerce business or with Amazon, for instance. They all, have different things you're going to have to work with and different challenges. But I would say when I started the company, I started again as a one-woman show. So I just needed to find the smallest co-packer that would take us. Cookie dough is something that people always have loved to eat raw. So I just knew that I wanted to make sure that this wasn't done in some small production kitchen, that this was done at a very safe co-packer from the beginning. And it's hard when you're starting out because you have minimum runs that you normally need to hit in order to work with, the top tier co-packers in the country. And when you're just getting going and you're only in a couple stores, you can't run thousands of pounds yet because you're just not at that volume. So I had the challenge, but also it was a great learning experience of moving to 4 different co-packers as we've grown. So we're now at our 4th co-packer. I think this is it. This is our home where we've really found a great partner for us now. But, as Jeremy just said, the first 5 years of kind of starting a food business, I think you learn so much and your product has to change. I think you change based on customer feedback. As you start growing, you start to learn what ingredients maybe you need to switch out, or maybe your packaging and branding isn't speaking the way you want it to. And, there's just a lot of parts of the business that you just have to tweak. So I would say some of our biggest challenges were, getting the right co-packer. So I moved from one co-packer that was 3.5-hour drive away from where I was living in New York City, to a different co-packer, because really based on customer experience, I would just listen to customers and they really wanted portion control packaging. They wanted cookie dough that you could just place and bake on a tray and make it really convenient and easy to bake. And also customers wanted to eat it raw safely. And, I kept listening to the customer. And so I switched to another factory. And as we grew, I was able, to switch to another factory. I think also packaging has changed a lot. When I first launched, I did it very homegrown from my kitchen, and, learned that once you're on shelf, you're competing, with these global brands, and you're competing against, thousands of other products in a supermarket, and you can catch a customer's attention span in 2 seconds. You have like 2 seconds to catch someone's eye when they're kind of running through the grocery store. And so I think, making sure that your packaging is eye-catching and is really conveying what your brand is. And that's a whole other kind of artistic, psychological aspect that you have to put onto your brand. And that was an amazing experience for us, because when I first launched, I kind of put our packaging was quite busy. I thought it was fun, but actually when you put it on shelf, you learn, okay, wait a minute, like you have very little time to capture people's attention. So what are our main drivers? And I think when we were able to extract, like, taste is number one for us, like we're about delicious taste. And then we're about, kind of being modern and bold and fun. And then also clean ingredients. Like, those are the 3 top things that we just want to convey. And so our packaging now, we really worked with that hierarchy just to make sure we were conveying those things. So, I think packaging is your biggest advertisement. So it was the most important thing for us to get right. And obviously, making sure your production quality is top notch and safe and can handle your volume is, equally as important. So those were the 2 biggest hurdles. And I think once we kind of nailed them, the product kind of sold itself because it could speak to customers and kind of capture that attention. As I've said, we launched with cookie dough. I launched with like a natural formula of cookie dough, just trying to create a healthier version of cookie dough for everyone to love. But once I was able to, get more distribution with it and heard from, hundreds of customers, I would hear I'm gluten-free, or my son has a nut allergy, can you make your product free from all these things? And so kind of just based on customer feedback, things that I didn't realize were important to millions of people, I've tweaked the product over time. So again, now our product is very natural and clean, but it's also gluten-free, it's vegan certified, it's peanut and tree nut free, it's dairy free, it's non-GMO verified. So, again, it's just that commitment to listening to your customer and constantly improving the product and seeing, how far you can take it.
Absolutely. And I think, consumer feedback plays such a big role in your early journey, right? In terms of your packaging, adaptation, design, upgrade. I think some of those challenges also resonate with other categories like bottled water. So I think, CJ, if you can talk a little bit about the challenges that you face, that would be awesome.
Sure. And I like the comment about it's easier, now than ever to launch a CPG business. I think that's probably right with the resources available. The trick is launching and having a successful CPG business. I think that because it's become easier to launch, it's become actually harder to be successful in being here in 5 to 10 years. Because what will happen now is if you find a good idea, it's not long till somebody sees what you're doing and then tries to copy you. And so for us, we've been pretty fortunate where our story started as a manufacturing one, right? The reason I even got involved in the first place is I was the architect and engineer for the facility. And, we were had the ability to make some of these decisions you wouldn't normally have available. So we didn't have to go to a co-packer and try to convince them to bring in new packaging. For us, that was really easy. We got to select all the different kind of sum or parts that made up the ultimate sum at the end. We got to kind of hand select that and choose who Proud Source Water was going to be. So that wasn't necessarily a challenge. But what I will say, my biggest or one of the most unique challenges, and I think it's just a critical component of all businesses, is people. It's really important to bring on the right people at the right time. And both are important, not just the right people, but also the timing is important. Proud Source is mission-based. I shared earlier, we have the goal of being kind of the best of our ability, doing everything right and doing bottled water better. We're a B Corp. We work to uplift small communities throughout the nation, too specifically, where we source and operate our production facility. But our company culture is really unique and it's special. It's a critical component to our business. It can be a challenge finding not only people who are passionate about our goals, but who have the appropriate experience, and then layer in the fact that are they going to be a cultural fit, right? There's just so many, depending on where you're looking and who you're looking to hire, there's a lot of considerations. And in a small business, in our case, we're now 47 employees, but when we were starting and I was employee number 1, those decisions of employee 2, 3, and 4 were even more critical, right? Like it was me and a few others at that point. And as you scale, in order to keep that culture special, it becomes more and more of a challenge as you add bodies, right? And you expand distribution and you grow to be national footprint. And you have people now working remotely or satellite offices. Making sure that you not only find the people, but that they're committed to growing the business in the direction that you had envisioned and hoped for. And I've learned this just through experience. Finding people who can fit into a startup culture where they can roll up their sleeves and aren't afraid to get their hands dirty and work on some of those things that they haven't necessarily touched for 10 years, right? Some of the stuff you would normally put to like assistant or an intern, right? These are the items that you get to enjoy doing on a daily basis in a startup business. It just doesn't matter if you're the president or if you're the marketing manager. It's all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, finding or partnering with the right people and not just, recruiting the fit talents, but also, partnering with the right, even capital partners. So I want to, put my VC hat on and talk a little bit about fundraising, as capital is very, very much needed as your business grows. And I think what many founders and investors are looking for in reality is beyond just capital. So we're also talking about personality compatibility, right? Whether your business fits in the thesis of a fund. So Jeremy, do you have any suggestions on, helping entrepreneurs identify the right time and the appropriate way to approach investors?
Sure. This is, always a bit of a hard thing to answer, but the short version of it is an entrepreneur has to be, first and foremost, very realistic about their own business. And that's hard because the nature of an entrepreneur is to be exuberant, irrationally exuberant in the face of all data to the contrary, right? And so it's hard to get an accurate picture of where you're at. And I say that you need accuracy because each type of capital is a great fit for a certain type of business, but the wrong type of capital is a disastrous fit for the wrong type of business. If you are not building a business that is going to grow 100% a year for those first few years, you are not a great candidate for venture capital unless, again, you have a very large R&D style asset. So if you're inventing the next, I don't know, pasta that has no calories, in which case you're going to be a zillionaire, you can afford to raise $50 million before you've ever sold anything. If you are, the next generation of the cookie business, and you are at 200,000 in revenue, and you think you're going to raise venture capital when last year you were at $150,000 in revenue, you have mismatched your growth curve to what their necessity is as a venture capital organization. So angel capital, angel group capital, individuals, friends and family, crowdfunding, SBA loans, economic development dollars, all of these have different attributes about what their requirements are from a return perspective. And easy math is venture folks are going to take in each round 30% of your business, somewhere between 25 and 40, but call it 30% for grins. And that money has to return to them at the early stage 10 times the amount of capital invested. So if you take in $3 million for 30%, that $3 million has to turn into $30 million at the end of the day after subsequent dilution, right? So you better be building a brand that's going to sell for $100 million, or you have done something drastically wrong. And the number of entrepreneurs who mistake raising capital for success is vast. And it is equally correlated with the number of brands that get sold for big dollars, where those founders see virtually no value out of those transactions. I mean, I've been doing this 22 years now. I'll tell you the number of times you read in the news, brands sold for $100 million. And what you don't know is that the founder may have gotten anywhere from $0 to maybe $1 million or $2 million out of that deal. It happens all the time, and it's because people over-raise capital before the brand is ready for that capital. They are not growing fast enough to really absorb the dilution from that capital. So there's very big economic consequences. The second thing is that you have to understand whether you want to be rich or you want to be the king or queen, as the case may be. If you take venture capital or you take institutional capital, it comes with a host of controls that means you are no longer the master of your own fate. And the second part of that is if you raise enough of that capital, you are also more likely than not about to not be the CEO of this company, this baby that you founded. When you've raised enough money that you lose control of the board and you've lost more than 51% of the total equity, it is more likely than not that a new CEO is going to be identified and brought in. And for some entrepreneurs, that's great. That's exactly what they want. They like being at the early stage. CJ talked about, you're at the roll up your sleeves stage and you like being in the innovation trenches, and you don't like working with branding agencies and thinking about how to spend $20 million in magazine ads. Like, if you like the early stage things, that's great news. But if you think, no, I'm going to be in control of this thing until we're bought by Danone or Pepsi or whoever, and you raise a bunch of money, that is actually unlikely to be true. You are likely to be asked to step away from the business as a condition of that new money, or even worse, you're not asked, you sell control, and it comes as a surprise to you that you are being told you are no longer the CEO of the company. That's a really bad outcome. So, I tell entrepreneurs all the time, investors are not mean, they're not evil, they're not, people say, oh, vulture capital. They have a job to do, and P.S., everyone who's watching this, they're investing your money, right? Your 401k, 10% of that 401k is probably sitting as an LP in some venture fund somewhere. So they have a job to do, and they're pretty candid about that job. And don't mistake that job for anything other than it is. They have to generate a return for their fund. And as long as you're okay with that and you understand how to align with it, then things can work out great. So, the best deals for entrepreneurs, some of the best deals I've ever seen are deals that exited at smaller dollars, but the entrepreneur still owned 60, 70, 80% of that brand. Versus I've worked on other transactions where, they were $100 million or $500 million exits, and the founders got virtually nothing in those deals. So don't never mistake, oh, I raised $20 million as like a yay moment. I always think of that as you've inherited $20 million obligations. That's what you just did. So, and sometimes more than that, right? Those deals can often be even more aggressive than people think. So align on structure, align with the growth rate of your business. Make sure you have an understanding of your goals about economics and control. And the last one is, I think, and CJ raised this point before about inside the company, fit matters. Fit and culture matter. If you're not working with people that you feel are respectful to you, that honor your vision, that honor your method of doing business, if you constantly leave every conversation thinking, wow, that was really unpleasant. Like, if it's unpleasant in the dating phase, imagine what the marriage phase is going to feel like. So fit matters, right? And work with people that you trust and that come with great recommendations. If you work with a venture firm that has 20 portfolio companies and they only give you 2 references and they feel nervous about you talking to the other 18, that's a sign. You should be thoughtful about that. So do your homework, and both sides should feel like this is something that they're really interested and committed to from a culture fit.
Awesome, Jeremy. And how does that, resonate? I guess, coming back to the founder story, Loren and then CJ can comment on this in terms of your fundraising process. Do you ever bring, Jeremy's this type of advice into practice, and what kind of, the fundraising process have you personally experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything Jeremy said completely resonates. I started the business, again, out of my kitchen. I raised some friends and family at the beginning to get it off the ground, because I soon realized, wow, like, you have to buy X amount of packaging up front, or there are slotting fees you have to pay, to work with certain supermarkets or whatever the case may be. And then, I've seen a ton of friends in this space, raised from VC or private equity funding. Thankfully for Sweet Loren's, we've been profitable and really healthy kind of since we started growing. And so we've been able to self-fund. And so we talk about potentially finding the right partner for us. And because we've been able to run the company ourselves, it's been, I see the pros to raising money, a lot of money sooner, because you can kind of do things kind of faster. But to Jeremy's point, I have really appreciated being able to take it slow, to just focus kind of on our growth, make sure it's product market fit as best as possible, build the brand as self-sustaining as possible. I love running the company. I love the team we've built. We have a really great culture. So I just want to protect it. And I think we talk as a team, who could potentially be the right fit if we wanted to raise money for a very specific goal. Like, we have this innovation that costs X amount of money, or we want a big marketing budget because we know exactly what we want to do with it, or we have a really clear goal over the next 3 to 5 years. But to Jeremy's point, once you bring on funding like that, you have to make sure you're just very aligned with the goals of that VC, where they're looking for a certain return, and you're going to commit to giving that return within a certain amount of time. And so I think for us, if we had that goal, then we could find the right partner for us. But I think the big watch outs are just making sure that it is a culture fit, that you're both aligned in terms of really what the goal of the company is financially, but also in terms of why you exist, what kind of products, the passion, the authenticity behind it, because I think those are the things that make a brand special. And so you want to make sure you're protecting it with the right partner. But if you do find the right partner and you just need that funding to accelerate the growth that you're having, then that's awesome. Fuel to the fire, go for it. So for us, it's a conversation we keep having.
Mm-hmm. And CJ, I know you've been, bootstrapping with your crowdsourced water. So do you have any plans in terms of you bringing on any institutional investors in the short term?
I don't know if I can directly speak to that. But what I will say, Douglas, is Jeremy's 100% spot on. It's raising capital shouldn't be taken lightly. It's a very serious matter, and being aligned is hypercritical. And the things that, for all the reasons he mentioned, fit and otherwise. And I will say too, one thing we've seen hold true is it's one of those situations where less is more. It's not about how much you raised. It's it's more about how you can get by with less, I think, is and really kind of grow and scale and challenge the business and to perform at a high level, maybe under somewhat, kind of bootstrapped, I guess if you want to use that term, but just with what the means you need and not necessarily want. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, Jeremy, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Would you like to add anything on fundraising?
Sure. I would also encourage folks, not only should you not be afraid of debt, but debt is a great friend to a packaged goods company and a inventory-based company, particularly if you're not overly DTC weighted. So if you're having to stretch between when you're paying a co-man and when you're receiving payments, particularly from distributors or retailers who might take a while, getting a credit relationship in place with a lender, revenue-based financing, other kinds of things that help you bridge those gaps can be absolutely key to growing the business. And occasionally people say to me, oh my God, this lender wants 12%. And I say, like, the equity's costing you like 40%, right? Like, if you actually do the math, the equity is way more expensive. So people shouldn't be afraid of debt. It's also vanilla is your friend at the beginning, because overly spending too much money on lawyers and accountants to go figure out what the lawyers did is not a great use of money. But at the same time, one of the beauties of our industry is that it's relatively flexible. I mean, we've done all kinds of deals in order to help companies get financed. It's less rigid than the technology or the life sciences space. People are more willing to do weird and wacky things. And that can solve problems. And so when you think about, Loren's exactly right. Always start with, why do I need some money? What is the purpose of this thing? What does it get me? And that should never be a revenue metric. That should be, something that's moving the business forward from a proof standpoint, from a value creation or risk reduction moment, right? My first big customer, my first national, we're rolling out to DTC, we're rolling out through, DSD finally, whatever it is, but it's not, oh, this is so I can hit 10 million. That's not a goal. That's just a accounting kind of thing. If you figure out you need that money, then it's about working with investors or your advisors to say, how can we creatively solve this problem? We need $3 million. Where do we get $3 million? The answer is not venture or bust. And Loren's point was, it should be really well taken, that the more profitable you are, such that you have options, that you do not have a looming brick wall in front of you of having to shut down the business and lay off people. If you've created optionality for yourself, you will have more kinds of deals on the table. You will have all those deal terms will be better for you because you can say no. And the frustrating position to be in is, you take a little bit of money, you promise people high returns, you march down the road, and 9 months later, you need a lot of money. And now you're running out of capital, and there's this looming endpoint, right? The maturity date on a note, there's we're going to just run out of capital and be unable to order inventory, and we're going to go out of stock. Like, if you get to that place, now every deal starts to look like an okay deal that you normally, 2 months earlier would have said, like, no, I would never do that thing. And now all of a sudden it's this deal or shutdown, right? So the math starts to change pretty fast. So making sure that you can create the ability to say no and to create a BATNA, right, is really important. It really helps you build the business you want to build. And that can mean it takes longer. And there is a push from the media, there's a push from a lot of people of, well, if you don't raise 10, 15 million from a high profile VC within the first 18 months, you're garbage. Your brand is, not to be talked about and not interesting. Like, that's just not true, right? There's plenty of great brands and great success stories that were built for years when they didn't have outside capital, and they did it kind of low and slow, but they made sure they were profitable. So, sorry, that was a long answer to a short question.
No, thank you so much, Jeremy. I want to, give some time for our audience for the Q&A session as well. But I do have one last question. I think CJ can be great expert on that, which is sustainability. We talked a little bit at the beginning of our conversation, but I also want to share, some of the stats that I've found recently from New York University Stern's Center for Sustainable Business. And the data show that products that had a sustainability claim on pack accounted for 16.6% of the market back in 2018, which that's an increase from 14.3% in 2013, and delivered nearly $114 billion in sales, up 29% from 2013. And most importantly, products marketed as sustainable grew 5.6 times faster than conventional products. But we also have heard brand managers, in the meantime, complain that while consumers say they intend to buy sustainable products in store, they don't actually purchase them. So I guess my question for CJ is, how do you communicate your sustainable aspects efficiently and effectively to attract environmentally conscious shoppers?
It's a really good question. I think there's some things that are easy and there's less obvious ones. And so starting with kind of those that are easy, we kind of addressed the elephant in the room that plastic is becoming, a pandemic in our world. It's unfortunately only about 8% of plastic in the entire world globally it ends up being collected and recycled. I think here in the States, it's about 29% in the most recent data I've seen. And the challenges, it's with plastic, the material challenges, it can't be recycled. It's really more a downcycled, right? It can't be recycled into the same product. It usually goes from a virgin grade to a grade 2, 3, 4, right? And there's about 7 or 8, and they're always innovating with additional plastic grades. But ultimately, the packaging pieces, I think, for an entrepreneur, it's the easy kind of button. If you're going to look at sustainability and make sustainability a core component of your business, which, if I put on my own personal opinion hat, I would say that it's going to be just a matter of time till every CPG business has sustainability as a core component. It's not a if, it's a when. But starting and leading with packaging, because it frankly is one of the ways you can really kind of pick off an easy way to communicate to the consumer by showing something disruptive. For us, aluminum, back when we launched aluminum in water, we were the only aluminum bottled water in the aisle. So and still to this day, we get to take advantage of the fact that our bottle is a billboard to us. It's unique, it's disruptive. Folks pick it up and they want to learn more because, it really kind of jogs their mind to say, what is this doing here? This is kind of, this doesn't fit in. Then the second piece, of course, is, you can talk about sourcing methods and the way you manufacture. You can start to see, even with the plant-based movement, you can build out entire new categories that are solely based on, healthy diet, but also very much rooted in sustainability, whether it be water conservation or the fact that it can be regenerative. The list goes on. One way that we found, a way to stand out from kind of the rest was something called a benefit corporation. And I'm sure some folks have stumbled upon this. Maybe you've seen it on a logo. Maybe you're a fan of Patagonia and you might have seen them kind of tout it. But Proudsource Water became a certified B Corp it was in July of 19. And ultimately, for those who are not familiar with what a B Corp is, it means that a company's met effectively the high standards of both social and environmental impact. So you can describe what that company as, or the way they describe it is using it for a business as a force of good. Mainly centered around impacting people and planet. And so we've taken that certification and used it as a platform to communicate to consumers that we're the real deal, that we're not greenwashing, that we're not just talking about sustainability because it's trendy or it's buzzworthy. It's because it's something, it's who we are. We're very proud to be for people and planet and really do everything within our power to excel. And really the business is built on that. And so, for us, just that level of transparency, that certification, letting them know is just a way in which to kind of establish yourselves as a leg up versus the competition, especially when going into a category or a very challenging market like bottled water, where it can be tough to kind of differentiate the product.
All right. Thank you so much, CJ. And I was just informed that we're a few minutes over time. So I want to give the closing marks to our absolutely wonderful panelists to just give one quick sentence to early stage founders, how they can, successful, what they can do to, excel in the categories they play in. That would be awesome. So Loren, do you want to start with that?
Sure. My biggest, best advice to give is, find something that you're truly passionate about, because authenticity matters. And also this isn't easy. So when you really care about something, you'll get up every day to fight for it. So find something that you really care about. Find white space in the market. There's still so much white space in the market. There's so much opportunity in food and beverage to improve what's already on the shelf. So find a category that, you care about, that there's opportunity in, and then make sure you really test it, listen to customer feedback, tweak, evolve it. Don't be afraid of continually evolving the brand and products.
Jeremy.
I would say, and 100% self-serving. So put that out there. Get yourself a great extended team, and that means your lawyers, your accountants, your supply chain consultants, add people to a board of advisors. Human capital is what makes this business run. It makes most businesses run, but particularly where you're in a non-high technical environment, this is all about people and smarts and connectivity and support. Go build a team, and there are a few industries that takes more of a village than this. And the other amazing thing about this industry is there's few industries that are less or that are more open to people being part of your village. I mean, you go to every event, you can talk to anybody you want to at that event, and people will engage with you and answer questions. Back when you could take people to coffee, that was a little bit easier, but even still, go build a great team and build an A+ team. Don't build the B- team because you think you can't talk to the A+ team, or they're too expensive, or the human capital is everything in this business. All
right, and back to you, CJ.
I'll be quick. Passion is critical, as kind of was talked about, but I would say try to find something that solves multiple problems. The more problems you're solving for, the bigger your consumer group is going to be. So if you're solving one problem, it's likely it's a smaller group. If you're solving 5 to 10, you're probably talking to a bigger audience at that point.
All right. Thank you all so much for your great comments.